let's look at about direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. This is a basic concept about cost accounting. We cannot understand cost accounting without knowing direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. These are a type of costs that is used to produce a final product. So when we see this final product or this chair, there is a cost which is spent on this chair. For example, we have bought this wood in order to produce this chair. Without buying this wood, we cannot produce the final product. So any cost that is incurred in order to produce this chair, or in order to buy this wood and to make this chair, any cost that is incurred on this wood, it is called the direct material, because this wood is directly assembled and returned to the final chair or the final product. This material is a direct material, and the cost that we incur for this wood or for this direct material or in order to buy this wood is called a direct material cost. That's what we call a material or direct material cost. The other one is direct labor cost. This is also a cost that is paid for the workers. For example, if it is on hourly basis, we know how much we pay for this worker on hourly basis. For example, if it is $5, we know that if this worker works in our factory for 1 hour, we'll pay him $5. So if this worker spent 4 hours in order to produce this chair, these 4 hours times his wage that we have agreed to pay per hourly basis, which is a $5. This $5 times this 4 hour is the cost that is spent for this worker in order to produce this chair. So this is also called a direct labor. We know how much we have paid in order to produce this chair for the labor. We know how much we paid for him in order to produce this chair. So it is direct cost. Why it is called direct? We know that how much amount of costs we have used in order to produce this. However, also for the material, we know that how much material we spent, we have paid or we have bought in order to produce this one chair or this one final product. But if it is hard to allocate this cost for this final product, because there might be a lot of chairs or a lot of other chairs that is used to produce using different materials and different indirect costs. Those costs are called indirect costs because it is hard to assign that costs for one specific product or for one cost object if we have a multiple products. So from this we can conclude that costs or manufacturing costs are two types, which are called direct costs, which include direct material and direct labor. Also indirect costs, which include a manufacturing overhead. This might be an indirect material. For example, indirect material might be, in this case, so to understand indirect material, think of this glue. Probably it might not be applicable to use a glue to produce chair, but let me think of it just for illustrating or for understanding purpose. Let me say this person has bought one glue and he have used this glue for different chairs, not only for this chair or for this one final product, but there might be a lot of chairs that this glue is used in order to attach one wood with another. At this time it is very hard to allocate a cost that this person uses for one product if there are multiple products produced by this person. So it is very hard to attach. We know that this glue, the liquid part is a material, but we cannot easily assign for one product. It's not easy to assign for one product. That's what we call indirect materials are also included in manufacturing overhead, which are very hard to assign and allocate the cost for each product. It's not easy for us to know how much if we use, for example, this part of the glue in order to produce this chair. it's very hard. How much we have spent in order to how much this part of the glue is cost, and how much glue we have used for each product. It's very hard and not easily traceable for each product or for each final product, like the direct materials, like the wood or the direct labor, which can be easily calculated, or which we know how much we have spent for one product. The other one is, it might be indirect labor. When we say indirect labor, there might be, for example, supervisors. A supervisor fee is included under indirect costs, because if this supervisor comes in order to visit how our work is going, he will visit all of the products. For example, if we produce 50 chairs, he will look at every chairs and check if they are okay or everything is going as a planned. So if we pay for this supervisor $50, it's very hard for us to know, or it's not easily traceable. It's not easy to trace this amount of money for this product, this amount of money for this product. We cannot know that how much you spend for the supervisors in order to visit only one chair. So it's very hard for us to allocate this cost to one product, or the supervisor's fee for one product. At this time, we call it the cost to spend for this supervisor is a cost incurred for it's an indirect cost. We cannot know how much you spend for one product, like we have seen for the direct labor. Probably there might be a lot of things that this supervisor will see other than this product, so it's not a better idea to allocate this $50 for each product or for each final product. We cannot know how much we spend for supervisor for one product. It's very hard. That's why it's called indirect labor, indirect costs. So for indirect costs, it's very hard to allocate the cost for each product. That's why it's called indirect. However, it's very easy and not hard to allocate direct costs for each product, for one product. There is a systematic way of allocating manufacturing overhead costs to one product, but it's not easy. That's why it's called indirect. So as we have seen in the previous video, there is something called cost accumulation. Why we accumulate cost is just to allocate, to assign that costs for each cost objects. For example, why we should know the total direct material cost is to allocate this direct material cost for one product in that department or in the total. So to assign this direct material for this cost object for the final product, we might use different methods. This process of assigning the total costs, it might be the total direct material cost, or it might be a total direct labor cost, or it might be a total manufacturing overhead cost. It is called cost assignment, which means allocating the total costs for each cost object. It might include cost tracing. Cost assignment has two parts, which is cost tracing and cost allocation. As we have seen in the previous, it's very easy to allocate or to know these direct material costs for one product. Allocating these direct costs for one product, for example, allocating direct material cost for one chair, or allocating the direct cost for woods, for it might be different, a lot of woods. So allocating some amount of wood for one chair, it is called cost tracing, which is a part of cost assignment. We are assigning the cost. If it is for direct costs, which the cost is known, it's called cost tracing. However, for indirect costs, for manufacturing overhead costs, systematically allocating that cost for one product is called, for example, allocating this amount of glue for one chair. It is called cost allocation, which is a part of cost assignment. So cost assignment contains two things: cost tracing and cost allocation. Cost allocation is allocating the total indirect costs to the cost object. However, cost tracing is allocating the total direct costs, which is direct material, it might be direct labor costs, to one product or one cost object. It's called cost assignment. Cost tracing. So for direct material and for direct labor or for direct costs, we'll trace the cost, the total costs to the cost object. This process is called cost tracing, which is a part of cost assignment. Also, we will allocate indirect costs to the total indirect costs to the cost object. It is called allocating, which is a part of cost assignment. It's all about